Thanks for tuning in to Women Who Open Doors, a podcast dedicated to lifting the voices of incredible women in our communities who not only excel in their careers, but inspire us through their actions for others. Hi, I'm Julie Collins, owner and coach of Not Magic, and it's my honor to help share the stories of these remarkable women. So without further ado, welcome to Women Who Open Doors. Welcome to Women Who Open Doors. Today, I'm super excited to have Beth Ridley join me. Beth Ridley is a corporate executive turned organizational transformation consultant, speaker, author, and now CEO of Ridley Consulting Group. Beth combines 25 years of global leadership and management consulting experience with expertise in diversity and inclusion and positive psychology, which we're going to talk about today, to help organizations transform their workplace culture. Beth's work is featured in national publications, and she frequently delivers keynotes and workshops at events around the world. She has lived in London, Tokyo, Johannesburg, and Bangkok, just to name a few, and now resides in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with her husband and 3 children. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. First of all, a very wonderful bio. So thank you for helping us understand you and for the listeners as well. And we'll get into the corporate side of you, but we found some interesting facts on you, Beth. So we're going to start a little bit more fun first.
Okay.
We had learned that you are a speed skater.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to start there.
Wait, yeah.
You speed skate. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Maybe not on the Olympic,
not on the Olympic circuit, no. But I train with Olympians because, I read at the Pettit Center. And so, a lot of people don't know there's only 2 indoor Olympic speed skating training centers, Milwaukee, the Pettit Center, and Salt Lake City. And so anyone who is like a professional speed skater or on an Olympic team from all over the world, they come and they train at the Pettit. So there's little old me, going really slow over by the side. And then there's like Shawnee Davis and all of the skaters that you see on TV, which makes it a little intimidating, but also like really motivating and really a lot of fun.
When did that start for you? When did that all happen?
It's a long time ago. I want to say maybe even like 8 years or a decade ago when the Winter Olympics was in Beijing. Okay. And for some reason, I run a lot. And so I was watching them and I was like, of course, they're Olympic skaters. So they made it look so easy. I'm like, that looks easy and fun. What a great indoor activity to do during the winter when I can't run outside. Right. And again, we have the Pettit Center. So I just called up there. They do offer beginner level classes. And so I took one with my daughter and it was so funny because when I went there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be the oldest person there. And my daughter was like, I'm going to be the youngest person there. And it turns out it was all ages in between. Oh, that's cool. And of course, it's way harder than, the Olympians make it look so easy. It's really hard, but it was really interesting. And there were so many like former Olympic skaters, professional skaters who I don't know, but they hang out there and they're the coaches. And so it was just kind of fun immersing in that world. So it's a great thing to do during the winter.
Yeah. Well, and you did it with your children as well.
I did do it with my daughter. She hung in there for a couple of years and then she moved on to other things. So for a while it was just me.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. No, when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's super cool.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. Yeah. And a whole nother world out there. So
yeah. Well, that's great. That's super cool. Well, we'll back up. We'll go back to some of the serious stuff or some of your work.
I'm glad that's the only thing that you found. I was scared.
Well, I didn't say that was the only.
Ask me about speed skating. That's fine. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, why don't you talk a little bit? I described a bit about your transformation and moving out of the corporate world, but just talk more first about your work and really more about what about this work really energizes you.
Well, I think the thing that really energizes me is, we spend so much time at work, and work can either be a horrible place that brings you down. And if you're not happy at work, it spills over into all other aspects of your life. But if we're spending so much time at work, why not make it an uplifting experience as much as humanly possible? And I was always trying to figure out how to bring more joy and more meaning into the workplace, because that's where we spend so much time. And so one of the things in corporate that I just had a knack for was creating positive team cultures, positive team dynamics, and making people feel valued at work. And I started to realize like that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. Sometimes leaders rise up into the organization because have really good like technical skills, but they don't necessarily like invest in people leadership, or they think it's like fluffy stuff. And I just started to feel like it's so important. You get so much more out of people, your biggest asset, leads to so much better outcomes by not thinking that, these are soft skills, but necessary skills, essential skills in terms of investing in culture. So that's what I do. And I really love it. Just being able to see small things that leaders can do to really change and transform the culture, and make it their company a place where people want to work because of the culture.
Yeah. Well, we had read too that you're doing this joy at work, which I love.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that, the 2023 Joy at Work challenge.
It was just a challenge. It's the new year. Everybody's thinking about resolutions. And so it comes up a lot in conversations. And a lot of people were saying, yeah, my resolution is to, just feel more fulfilled in my career. And, when I ask, well, how are you going to do that? Sometimes the answers were like really monumental, like, oh, I'm working on my promotion, or I need to find a new job, or I need to pivot my career, go into a new industry. And that's maybe not attainable in the near term for a lot of people. And so I said, again, digging back into my positive psychology background, we do know what leads to joy and feeling a sense of thriving and meaning. Like it's no secret, and there's data behind it. And one of the biggest source of joy and meaning in life are meaningful, positive relationships with other people. Well, again, spend so much time at work. Could you do small things to cultivate more positive relationships at work in your current job, on your current team, that can lead to more joy? And so that's what that was all about. Instead of taking on these big New Year's resolutions, sometimes they're so big, they feel overwhelming, or even talking about them, you get tired. You don't need to find a new job or change your career. That's great. In the meantime, while you still have to go to work on Monday, small things that you can do to just cultivate warmer relationships with your colleagues. So that's what that was all about.
So how have, people that you've talked to, or, people at your client situations, how do they react to that? Even to that suggestion?
Yeah, they like it. And frankly, this was sort of like a holdover from things that I started talking about at the end of the year. So I started to challenge my clients at the end of the year. Everybody's like, oh, what do I give for gifts? And, it's just like box of chocolate, flowers, whatever, fruitcake, something, just quick, because you feel like you have to give a gift and it ends up being more transactional. And again, and I said, joy at work is about the relationships. Can you give something that's meaningful to you, so that if people will remember it more, and it opens the door for more conversation, getting to know people beneath the surface. So I was challenging people at the end of the year to be more thoughtful and creative with their gift giving and give something meaningful to them. And people really love that, and they rose to the occasion. I have a friend, she is from India, and she loves to make chai tea. Chai, Indian tea. And so she gave everyone a small gift bag of the ingredients and the recipe, and just to talk about why she loves it, her heritage. It went over really well. So people really love that challenge. So the Joy at Work was just sort of like a spin on that. And people like it because it's very doable. You don't have to purchase anything. You don't have to have more time on your calendar, because everybody's already busy. But small things like just make sure that you use someone's name when you're saying good morning in the morning, right? Because hearing someone's name means to that person, you really recognize and see me and value me. It's not just a blanket good morning.
Right.
And so people are like, oh, I can do that. And they do it. Colleagues notice, they start to do it. And it's a easy, simple way to pivot the culture. So they like the really small, easy things. Nobody wants more on their plates. People are
Right.
already stressed out. So the more I can give people something easy to do, people gravitate towards it.
Yeah, especially in leadership, right? Because we're dealt with and what we're trying to do, sometimes you don't see the results
Yeah.
for years, right? So I love that, small action steps or
Yeah.
just small pieces for people, because then you do feel better just about taking a
You feel
step.
better and they get done. And I always tell people the best strategies are the ones that get done. I have a
Yeah.
management consulting background and, these big, huge, complicated strategies because they look really great in PowerPoint. And then the consulting goes away and you're like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And you know what? We're not.
Right.
Sometimes if a lot of people are like, oh, go big or go home. If you do go too big, you
Right.
do go home. It doesn't get done.
Yeah.
The best strategies are the ones that actually get implemented. And if something is easy to do and fun to do, people
Right.
will do it. And then,
Yeah.
you get results.
Well, go back a little bit then, just from your previous, back to those management days where what was missing for you? What part of the joy was missing, or that you needed to kind of make that pivot into your own consulting group?
Well, some of it was, again, I didn't think a focus on the people and the culture was as valued as I wish it would have been. I think a lot of times people just care about the end result. And as long as you're getting the end result, they'll overlook, mistreating people or, a toxic culture on the extreme side of things. I just didn't think that in a lot of cases, people leadership was seen as valued as technical skills. And I do think, for leaders, it should be expected that they do both. You both have technical skills, you can achieve outcomes, but the way in which you do it is motivating to employees, engages people, brings out the best in them. I actually think that should be the expectation of leadership. And when I started to feel like half of that equation, again, fluffy stuff, soft skills, nice to have, but we're not really asking about that. We're not really rewarding around that. We just care about the outcomes and it doesn't really matter how you get there. Well, that was sort of the thing for me. And I just thought, I know so many amazing leaders who work so hard and just don't feel appreciated. And, the old saying, it's lonely at the top. I think it really is because, sometimes your team members don't acknowledge the thought and the care that you put into being a people leader. Your employees don't. So sometimes when people start to feel like, well, what difference does it make? If everyone gives up, we're left with garbage.
Right.
So some of it is I wanted to be the consultant and the cheerleader to leaders who already want to do the right thing. I'm not convincing anyone that culture matters. I don't generally work with companies where I have to convince them. It's just that they want to elevate people leadership so that it really is valued on par with getting outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you think, I'm curious because of all the clients that you work with, because I agree with you, first of all, on you have to work with people that in their soul is they care about the culture. What do you think though is stopping them? What's preventing them? What's getting in the way where, you do these small action steps and kind of help them? What do you see getting in the way for those leaders?
So a couple of things is, one, their boss doesn't value it. And so, you start to pick and choose what you're going to focus on. And if you're not getting rewarded or acknowledged or praised for cultivating a good culture, you're going to stop doing that or stop investing in it as much because you just are not as motivated.
Mhm.
I think the other thing is people are they're just so busy, right? And it's
Mhm.
like you get to work, heads down, drive work forward, you get in execution mode, and being a good people leader, it's not rocket science, but it does require lifting your head up a little bit. It does require being a little mindful and intentional so that you're responding versus reacting. Generally, we
Mhm.
don't show up as our best selves when we react, right?
Right.
Usually it's when
Right.
you have the time to think. And so, it's rare that, people are just going from meeting to meeting. I just feel like leaders are just like hanging on by their fingertips, like
Mhm.
hanging on, treading water themselves.
Right.
So if you have a boss that's not sort of like helping you prioritize this, and you just have so much on your plate, you just sort of show up and you do the best you can. And sometimes that's like the minimal level. So I think
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that, and some people just have never seen examples of better leadership.
Mhm.
They rise to the level of what they've personally experienced. But I think a lot of people sort of intellectually get it. Yeah, a culture, yeah, for sure. But again, they don't have the habit, and they just default to got to get my work done. And
Yeah.
as long as we drive this and get it done, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter how it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes, like you said earlier, it's just so about the outcomes, the results, that it's hard to get past that and just
Yeah,
take a breath and
yeah,
just take a breath.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because, I have a lot of clients, they're really burnout, anxiety. I mean, these were the hot topics when I started, when I left corporate
Mhm.
to start. I only focused on positive psychology. I do a lot more diversity, equity, inclusion
Mhm.
now, but it's almost starting to come back to
Mm.
turning the corner of the pandemic, mental health being a topic that is becoming more acceptable to talk about at work. I think people, hopefully, maybe we're gonna like rotate to a healthier way of thinking about work and not thinking it's only about production, and sometimes stepping out and just taking a breather helps you to be more productive in the long term versus just
Yeah.
productive in the short term. I think it's starting to become a little bit more understood in
Yeah.
corporate. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we can, because I think that, that is, that's the stopping point for people. If they don't feel like they can, if they can't even give themselves permission, and then they're not getting
Yeah.
permission.
And
Um,
and it starts with leaders. So, like even simple things, and I was guilty of this because, I actually do like to work really late at night. So, that's just my preference. And so
mhm.
I'd be like firing off emails to my team at like 1 o'clock in the morning, just thinking like, oh, no one's going to be reading it, but at least I've got it off my plate. But I'm sort of setting a tone, as the
Right.
boss, people are taking their cues and they're like, am I supposed to be working this late at night?
Mhm.
Do I need to
Mhm.
respond to this email? So, I got feedback and I was like, I'm not trying to like set a
Right.
standard that you got to work all night. That's how I work. But, I'm setting a tone. So, I
Right.
modified my behavior. I'll still work at night, late at night, but I'll save my emails or I'll time them to go at a
Yeah.
respectable hour in the morning. So it's just kind of like being mindful of the tone that you're
Yeah.
setting because, employees are smart. They look, they'll, hear what you have to say, but they'll look to see what you're doing and what other leaders
Mhm.
are doing, and they'll pick up on those behaviors. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, the fear of separation, right? If I don't do that, I
Mhm.
might have to leave, because maybe that's the way that I'll be judged as well. And I think that's super hard
Yeah.
for people.
Yep.
Well,
Mhm.
you kind of brought it up a little bit. This kind of leads in. You have a beautiful quote on your website that says, "Being an inclusive leader means you're self-aware of what you don't know, curious and courageous enough to ask questions, and be prepared to listen and eager to learn." So,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that, and that whole sense of vulnerability.
So, with the DEI work that I do, I always get, well, what does it take to be good at DEI? And everybody sort of thinks, oh my God, I got to learn everything about all differences and different cultures. And I tell people, like, that's impossible. Like, literally, I don't even know how you would accomplish that goal. possible. So instead of, again, it's not your technical skills, it's not how much you know, it's more behaviors. And the best thing that we can do to approach your daily interactions with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens is to recognize that you don't know everything. No human does. We haven't walked in every person's shoes. So I think that's the main thing. Instead of trying to learn so much, recognize there's a ton I don't know. Well, what do you do about it? Well, you ask questions, but a lot of people, I don't want to ask the questions. I don't want to offend anybody. Well, then how are you going to learn? You just ask a question in a way that's not offensive. There are ways to do that. Then I like to say, okay, that's step one. Acknowledge that you don't know everything. You got to be a little humble. You don't know everything. So how do I learn more? Broaden my lens, broaden my perspective. I got to ask. And then once you ask, you're going to hear things that you don't like or that challenge your own beliefs. And then that's where people are like, well, this is why I don't want to engage in this at all. And I tell people, no one's asking you to change your beliefs. You can be just who you are. Don't change anything. However, you do have to respect someone else's life choices, life experiences, beliefs, just like you would want them to respect your own, and seek to understand even when you don't agree. Even when there's stuff happening around you that you can't stand, you don't like, it goes against every fiber in your body, there's something to be learned. If nothing else, it's like, oh, good to know other people think that way.
Right.
And to me, that's what being a good leader is all about. You're paid to make thoughtful decisions. You cannot make thoughtful decisions if you're only seeking input, thought leaders, partners, sources based in your known territory. You got to step out. You got to ask questions. You got to take a broader lens to your challenges, opportunities, strategies, whatever. You will always make a more thoughtful decision. But it requires, again, recognizing you don't know everything, proactively asking questions, and being open to learning even when you hear things that you don't want to hear or don't believe.
Yeah, I think that open to learning is besides being self-aware, right, or acknowledging it. I think that's where I see people and where I see myself get stuck. Where if I'm already shut down and I'm not willing to be judged or on another playing field.
Yeah,
it's kind of, it doesn't move. You can't take that step because you're just stuck. You're stuck in, okay, well, I know that's not good.
yeah,
And it's hard. You kind of have to, really digest and really say, no, I do seek to understand because I want to be more knowledgeable, but I don't.
yeah.
And you might be judged by it, right? There's nothing you could do about it, but you might be judged by even saying that, which I think is sometimes the stumbling block as well.
I think so. But, I think everybody can appreciate that not any one person knows anything. And I think sometimes people respect people who admit when they don't know anything and are willing to seek help. That doesn't happen a lot. But, I don't think anybody's going to be discredited. I guess a lot of times leaders think like, I must know the answer. How? I mean, okay, at your own peril. Because if you start making stuff up or pretending that you don't know, well, you're not going to end up with a better outcome.
How have you seen this positive psychology also work across, leaders that are working with multi-generational individuals, right? Have you seen any trends that you'd love to share with us around that?
I think the trend that I see is that across generations and even across gender, people gravitate towards positive psychology concepts. I was actually kind of surprised. So when I first started to get into positive psychology, I sort of just kept it to myself. It was really more for like me. I was just curious and I wanted to learn about it because if there was like data that showed like how to be happier, like I'm all about that. But I didn't want to talk about it at work. Like words like mindfulness. And I still worked in a kind of a little bit more of a traditional environment. I didn't want to be not taken seriously. So I didn't really like sort of talk about it. But the more I started to really like appreciate the benefits, I started to talk about it a little bit more, but just more from my lens, like, I'm practicing meditation or mindfulness, or I'm doing this. And I was pretty prepared. I remember like I talked about this in a department meeting. And I was pretty prepared for like the dudes to roll their eyes, or for like the older, more tenured people on the team to just, kind of like laugh it off and be like, that was fluffy. But then I was always surprised who came to my office after to say, oh, it was so refreshing to hear you talk about that. I've also been thinking about these things, or here are my positive mindset practices. And it was across the board. It was men, it was women, it was the older employees, the younger employees. So, I think that it's becoming a lot more acceptable. And I think people are looking for coping strategies. So I've been more surprised that it's become a lot more mainstream, not just among women or younger employees who you might think would be more oriented to it. I kind of see it across the board.
That's cool. That's good. That gives me hope too. That gives me hope, right? Because
yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I will also say, and I started doing this during the pandemic when people were like really stressed out. And I had started doing recordings of leaders who I just always admired and respected, like, how are you coping through these really stressful times? And a lot of them were older men. And, they really shared stories about how, maybe they struggled with their own stress and anxiety. I think those things cut across all dimensions of diversity. And so I think the true leaders recognize that. They don't ignore it. They're in touch with it. And they are looking for strategies to minimize it, not just in themselves, but in others. So I think it's more the common thread is really good people leaders. This has been on their radar.
For sure. Well, when we started the conversation today, I asked you about speed skating. So I kind of want to close our time with what else do you do for fun besides that?
Okay, so this is interesting.
Okay.
I hate to cook. I really do. I'm not a foodie. I will have yogurt for dinner and think that it's the most delicious, satisfying meal. I hate to cook, and I'm not good at it. But I love cooking competition shows on TV.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. You and Hannah. So Hannah, our producer, same thing. You guys share a common bond there. What's that all about, Beth?
I don't know. I think I'm just like, cooking is baffling to me. I have no idea what spices go together, or, I burn toast, and I actually burn anything that I touch. And I always tell my kids, like, Mom, I can't eat this. It's burned. I'm like, It's blackened. It's Cajun style, right? So I think I'm just like impressed, especially those competition shows where like run to the pantry and grab these ingredients, and it's like random ingredients and they make something edible out of it. I can't do it. So I think it's really cool. So I'm doing that. And then my kids keep me busy. So they're involved in a lot of activities. So I also, I have my business, but I also have a part-time job as a chauffeur, I like to say.
You do.
Yes,
you do.
for very demanding. It's there's only two clients. They're very demanding, and they don't pay me.
They don't pay well, do they?
They don't pay at all. And they have bad attitudes. So I run around with the kids, and then just try to find fun stuff to do around town. So
That's cool. Well, around town here in Milwaukee, but I listed in your bio the places that you have lived, right? So what a beautiful experience and a beautiful way to like learn about different cultures, obviously, but not many people get to travel like that or live different places. So if there was one piece of advice you could also give to people from all of those experiences that you've had, what would that be from those travel experiences and those different locations of living?
Oh gosh. I guess that was very intentional. I always wanted to live abroad, and I sort of didn't care what the job was, just as long as it was abroad. So I guess one advice is, if you're interested in that, do all that before you have kids. This sort of simplifies it.
Yeah.
I also think that, it's just appreciating all the ways that we are more similar than not. When I moved to Japan, I didn't speak a lick of Japanese, not a single word. And before I was hired as an English teacher, so they didn't want me to speak Japanese. But my first couple of weeks there, I had like homestays, and I was staying in these families like nobody spoke English. So it's like, oh, hello. I don't know what to do. And so I just pulled out pictures of my family, and then they pulled out pictures of their family. And it's kind of like, we all are people. We want to have connections, again, sorts of joy in life. We might have different customs and traditions. So it's just kind of fun to see the differences, but then beneath it, how we're far, far more similar than not. So I think it's just whenever you have a chance to travel, it's great. Also helps you really appreciate, your life and where you come from. You have there's a lot of things that are troubling in the United States. And when you go abroad, it puts it in perspective, and no one country is 100% amazing or 100% horrible. They're just different. And you can put in perspective, what is great about the United States, and then also the work that we have to do to the work that we have to do to be better.
Yeah. Well, you have just been a delight to have on the show today. I love your positive psychology, learning more about it too, and just your view of culture. There's a deep soul connection that I have with you around that, because I believe that's what we all need, because otherwise you don't have joy at work. You don't have joy with your customers, people that work with you, partners outside. So I thank you for sharing all that wisdom, because I do think people need to hear more about it, because sometimes the world can be kind of deep and dark and not as joyful. So that's never a good place to live.
No. And I think we have an opportunity at work, because you got to show up. And so it's like, why not? Like, why not make Mondays more enjoyable? We have the opportunity. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Yeah. Where could our listeners find Beth Ridley if they are interested in contacting you?
Well, so please connect with me on LinkedIn at Beth Ridley. And also my company site is Ridley Consulting Group. That's on LinkedIn as well. But my website for my company is ridleyconsultants.com. Awesome. Well, definitely, I hope people reach out to you, because I think you have so much knowledge to share from your past and your travel and all kinds of things. So thanks again, Beth, for being on with us today. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we have. Are there inspirational women leaders in your life? Recommend them for this podcast by emailing me at jcollins@knot-magic.com and telling me why they're the perfect person to be featured. And please leave us a review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts to help us share these amazing women with others.